Siona God, hello all. Oshta afternoon and Wado for watching. Good afternoon and thank you for watching. So we are finishing up chapter 1 on Transformation of America, the true life story of a CIA mind control slave by Kathy O'Brien with Mark Phillips. And we will make it into chapter 2 today and keep it under 10 minutes. For every problem, there exists a solution. The formula for problem solving rests firmly on the quality of the supporting research information concerning the nature of the problem. Legislating laws specifically to protect people from mind control abuses would be futile. Practically every civilized society in existence has some law and or group of laws which would protect the people and punish the practitioners of mind control. Laws are enforced according to lawmakers' interpretations of the specific legal language. The lack of enforcement of laws already on the books that could protect us from mind control abuses stems from applied legal interpretations and cover-ups of survivor testimony by the CIA and National Security Agency, NSA, for reasons of national security. Mind control atrocities, if committed by anyone who could be linked to government-sponsored projects, are typically ignored and covered up. Access to the courts by these hapless survivors is thus stonewalled by government-paid so-called legal experts who receive their orders from the National Security Agency. Defining the term mind control is akin to defining the limits of the 1947 National Security Act. The basis for the solution to the national security controversy is simple. It is known as truth logically applied. It is an obvious truth that the National Security Act has been interpreted not to guard the integrity of military secrets, but instead to protect criminal activity of the highest order. Repeal of this act and replacement with the established rules of military conduct concerning national security that do not infringe upon the constitutional rights of Americans, citizenry, or the rights of its allies would result in compliance with the Constitution. Chapter 2, Salesman, Admin, Mind Man, Patriot, My Personal Evolution. Every revolution, bloody or bloodless, has two phases. The first is the struggle for freedom, the second, the struggle for power. The phase of the struggle for freedom is divine. He who has participated in it invariably feels, almost physically, that his best and most precious inner self has come to the surface. We know that being faithful to the truth stands higher than our own participation in governing the country, and that is why we must not have a society that would reject ethical norms in the name of political mirages. As I was saying to my grandmother, Mameline Johnson, Mameleen Johnson, my life has turned into a nightmare and I'm wide awake. Tears were streaming down my face, dripping off my chin onto her patent leather shoes. She affectionately patted my shoulder as she listened. The words we exchanged, the rooms, wallpaper, and furnishings, my beloved grandmother, Mameline. Even the taste of my tears combined with the feeling of overwhelming grief. It is all there etched into my memory. This was the summer before I was to enter my second year of school in 1950. The first year remains a blur with cause. Life for me and my family had changed dramatically over the previous year, so radical a change that it had taken almost a year for me to realize life was not becoming any easier to live. My stuttering was getting worse. The rare moments I could speak coherently were limited to short sentences devoid of the word you, and then only to my mother and grandmother. Occasionally, when angry, I could speak clearly, or when alone in the woods while talking or singing to trees. Apparently, my frustration with oral communication due to stuttering had been intensified by a trauma I experienced the previous year. Little did I know then that this trauma would positively and negatively influence my future and the lives of others I would know for the rest of my life. On a hot and sticky Tennessee July day in 1949, my father helped boost first my mother, then me, into the saddle astride our 4-year-old, high-spirited gift horse, Wojak. This was to be my first ride on the back of an animal. The excitement of the moment, combined with stuttering, rendered me literally speechless. As I recall, and from photographs taken at the time, I was wearing a sweat-soaked pale yellow cotton shirt, dark tan shorts, brown socks, and dirty tennis shoes. At 6 years old, I was very thin and did not take up the remaining saddle space behind my mother. With the reins in my mother's hands, the horse responded for her polite command of, "Come on, Wojak, giddy up." He began slowly walking down our driveway to the narrow crushed limestone road beside our property. Upon reaching the gravel road, the horse turned or was guided left, momentarily disappointing me as I knew we were only going for a short ride. It was only about a quarter of a mile to the busy paved intersection that would be dangerous to cross. Had my mother decided to go in the opposite direction, we could have ridden for a couple of miles before reaching any automobile traffic. As quickly as the horse made the turn from our driveway onto the country road, my mother nudged his flanks with her heels, with another command of "let's go." The horse responded with a mild jerk of motion and then began a fast trot down the middle of the road. The horse's speed, in retrospect, was too fast for safe travel on gravel. Not knowing this then, I was not scared until I saw the crossroads looming closer. I can hear myself half shouting, "Better slow down, might be a car coming." Before I could enunciate the last words, my mother began a slow sideways slide off the saddle. I could not see her face as she disappeared under the horse, and the reins disappeared with her. The horse bolted, full speed ahead. In the blink of an eye, my realization of being alone in the saddle with no way to control the horse washed over me. Quickly, I tugged on his mane to no avail. It was in this instant I determined that the runaway horse was not going to stop for the crossroads. I jumped. As I recall, the fall was swift and my abrupt landing on the sharp rocks was not painful, though it seemed that my body would never stop rolling. Panicked, and with the dust beginning to settle, I sat up, blinked the dust and sticky blood from my eyes, and I looked about for my mother. She lay in a disorganized heap beside the road. I ran to her. The first mental impression I experienced was that she was just wide-eyed, dazed from her fall. Then I noticed her eyes weren't blinking, and around her head was a thick puddle of blood. Not wanting to leave her in the road for fear she would be run over and not strong enough to pick her up, I began screaming in the direction of our home, in hopes that my father could hear me. Almost immediately, he responded by sprinting to us, all the while shouting, "What happened? What happened?" For the life remaining in me, I could not answer, for as usual, I was speechless. As he knelt down to speak to my mother, he stopped mid-sentence when he apparently saw her eyes in a fixed gaze, and that the back of her skull was crushed inward. Instantly, he picked her up, and as we were running back to the house, he commanded my 11-year-old sister to call an ambulance. To this day, I cannot recall how we got to the hospital. The grisly scenes of this tragedy were not my nightmare. It did not play over and over again in my mind, for I had dissociated from it. I had voluntarily and autogenically created a memory barrier of this trauma. This is a normal human response. Had I been tortured after the trauma, I would not have been able to voluntarily recall either the accident or the torture, hence the basis of this book. The nightmare began during the subsequent recovery year, when we realized my mother would never be herself again. She had lost over a quarter of her brain when the horse stepped into her skull. Permanently gone was her ability to smell, taste, and hear in one ear. These were the physical handicaps she developed. Her resultant emotional condition would become evident to me many years later. As a child, this new awareness of my mother's condition had minimal impact on me compared to the fear I lived with, moment to moment, due to my father's chronic alcoholism. Years later, my sister would follow this lead into a losing battle with the bottle. I was safe, as alcohol made me stutter. After being told so many times during my developmental years that my mother's condition was attributable to her brain damage and that my stuttering was because my brain was not working correctly, it occurred to me at some point to learn about the brain. For years after the accident, I overheard adult conversations about my mother's brain. My curiosity piqued about the brain and the resultant invisible mind, and had set the course for my life's interest. Somewhere in this time period, I fantasized I would learn enough about the mind and brain to help my mother and myself. I'll go ahead and end it here. Don't go hang you mean a good shinosuke till we meet again. Love you, mean it. It's almost as if I'm reading this book for the first time. I was like, whoa. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it.